Sorry for being late.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody's busy, right?
I don't know why my clock, I had 3 o'clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 2. My mistake.
No problem. Looks like we've got everybody here that will be able to join us for our board meeting. My name is Glenn Stockton. I'm the vice president of the board. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order because our president, Kathy Laboon, will not be joining us today as she submitted a notice of resignation yesterday. And so we definitely are going to miss her, and we're going to do our best to try and carry on, without her very positive and upbeat take on things. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll do a roll call to establish quorum. Carl Harden.
Present.
Carol Dawkins.
Here.
And Ben Kennedy.
Here.
Okay, so we have 4 out of 5 here, so we definitely have a quorum. Proof of notice, Paul?
Yes, the notice was posted at the clubhouse on Tuesday, May 31st, and it was posted at the same time on Dwelling Live.
All right, very good. Because we have the situation with Kathy resigning, Paul, board members, do you have a preference as to whether or not we address it first thing during this meeting, or perhaps first thing during new business?
I would suggest new business personally.
First thing, new business.
I would agree.
Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll end up making that our first item of new business to discuss. And
can I just ask, Glenn, can we make it at the end of our discussion, or is it better to do it at the beginning?
It's up to you guys. If you would prefer that we do it at the end, I just want to make sure that we are respectful of any time constraints that others have.
Fair enough.
So that we make sure that we do get it done while everybody's here. But that's fine. Let's see about the end. In that case, we have the approval of some prior board minutes. I understand we have 11/19 and 3/4. So 11/19/21, 3/4 of 22. Do I have any discussion on the minutes that were proposed in the packet?
No, I appreciate the adjustments made for the 11/19. They're a little bit more detailed on some of the information, so that's good with me. I put forward a motion to approve 11/19 as is.
Okay.
I second the motion.
All right. Thank you, Carol. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Very good. How about on the 3/24 minutes as proposed?
No comments for me.
No comments.
Okay. Do I have a motion then?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as read for the March 2022.
Very good. Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'll abstain, Glenn, since I wasn't at the meeting.
Okay. So Carl abstains. Everyone else is aye. So I vote in favor as well. And so those minutes are approved as well. So the next item of business that we will move on to is old business, and that is the March, April financial approvals. And so in your packet, you should have our financial statements from guest services, March and April. Has everyone had an opportunity to look through them? And Paul, do you want to make any comments on them?
Sure. So let me start with March. On the HOA side, resort fees came way well over budget, close to $50,000 over budget. Marketplace revenues were high due to occupancy, so that was very well done as well. Access control purchase of owner key fobs was an additional expense. The rest of that, all expenses were pretty well controlled, leading to a positive of $9,180 total HOA operating net income. Any questions on the March HOA?
No questions here.
Good.
Okay.
Moving on to club access control purchases for our wristbands for the club was obviously a higher expense than expected, but and on the other hand side, we collected $9,218 year to date as of March for non-returned wristbands. Housekeeping supplies was overdue to higher occupancy. Security equipment, we had the annual fire alarm inspections, so that will offset throughout the year. We basically budgeted as flat monthly throughout the year, so that should offset since that was the annual inspection. Front desk expenses, we had to order new maps and parking passes, obviously with higher occupancy, so we have a higher usage on that as well. And market space expenses were higher as well due to the increase in sales as well. Total, so other expenses were well maintained, and we turned into an $8,760 total club net income for March 2022 on the club side.
Okay. Any comments on those? Okay, hearing none, let's see. Do we, let's see, then there's.
Let's just go into the April.
Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and move on to April then. Thank you.
Okay, April, another good month from a revenue standpoint. Overall revenues were over $54,000 in positive. Significantly was the $48,000 in resort fees, which is a 45% increase over the budgeted amount. And marketplace produced more than double the budget for the month of April. So very strong months there. All expenses throughout on the HOA side were very well maintained. Utilities a little higher, but that has to do with obviously with usage as well. And our debt services, which started again early in the year. So we produced a slight negative of $1,116 on the HOA side for April, which is still $52,000 favorable over budget, and produced a 95% flow from the overage on the income.
I do see that year to date, we're still positive.
Yes.
So that's good.
Year to date, we're sitting at a $97,490 positive net income.
Any questions on the HOA operations?
Paul, I know we haven't gotten to it, but how does May look on resort fees? Is it still just as strong?
We had historically May is a little slower, but we had a very steady month, I should say, and it turned out at the end the holiday weekend was pretty strong. So we had close to 400 check-ins that week of the Memorial Day. So, but
that's pretty good.
it will obviously not be comparable to March and April, but it should be favorable.
Good. Okay, that's the only question I had.
Great. Any other questions?
None here.
Club operations then?
Okay, moving on to club operations. Things to point out is legal and professional fees were a little higher because of the final negotiations with the easements, parking easements, and things like that was regarding to the Wilkes retreat next door. And bank fees were higher, obviously, due to the higher resort fees, higher credit card usage. Pool contract and chemicals, we had a higher usage in chemicals, obviously, through the increase in occupancies and obviously the influx in chemical costs for the pool operation. Gift shop expenses were higher. Again, we had more than double in income on the gift shop, therefore expenses were a little higher as well. Payroll was well controlled. If you look at a 45% resort fee increase versus only a 6% overage on payroll, I think it was very well maintained on that side. Expenses well controlled throughout, produced a negative 8,083 on the club side as a net income. Year to date, we're still sitting at a $4,500 positive.
Okay. How do you feel about going into the summer with, the additional months as we proceed? Do you think we're going to be able to stay close to our overall annual budget?
On the club side, the thing is, since most of our expenses going into the club side and the income's running into the HOA, which we all agreed at one point a couple of years ago. So we have to see how we gonna go through that. Obviously, higher increases in occupancy will impact the cost on the club side too. So we should see how the next couple of months gonna go.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would just, this is
two really small ones. Oh, sorry, I apologize. Go for it.
It was good to see that we got our retreat revenue.
Hey, good call out. But Laura, you wanted to say something?
No, I was just going to say, just overall market wise, I do think this summer will be strong. It is throughout the market. I mean, record numbers. So hopefully that will continue. I mean, the resort fees alone will have exceeded has the past 2 months. I think will pace that same way this summer as it stands now, unless there's some other thing that happens in the world. Gas prices, I think people will stay local and want to drive.
All right, very good. Appreciate that.
I just have two minor questions for you, Paul. They're not very large numbers, but could you explain, it looks like our IT services and consulting fee website are slightly variations from what we had budgeted. I'm just wondering if we had to do any additional services.
What we had to do is we had obviously various outages. Our new IT company, obviously, they're finding a lot of things which were not the way set up it's supposed to be. Giving you one example, we have switches which control some of the Salto and key fob systems. They are outside, installed in a box outside, exposed to the environment. And obviously with the higher temperatures, they are not well protected. So we had one new switch installed, and within a week that switch gave up. So basically failed because of the heat. And therefore it was under warranty, of course. They had to get a replacement, which took a while. But these items, kind of switches and some of the paneling, these are the additional costs we have accumulated lately.
So essentially our hardware is in need of updating, and it's past its shelf life at this point. So we're going to start seeing some of those costs, which we should just keep in mind, I guess, for next year's budgeting, just to know that we may have to do some planned upgrades to our old hardware.
Yeah, and we are waiting a proposal from Milner to make some of the adjustments, obviously to move some of the equipment inside. Of course, there's a cost involved in that, but I should have that by early next week to present to the board.
Okay. Yeah. Any other questions, Ben? All right. Thank you for that. So now that's our update on April, or March and April financials. Paul, are you looking for an approval from the board for the financials that were presented to us?
We haven't done, but we can, of course.
Okay.
Can I get a motion?
Before we get to a motion, if we're going to vote, then we need to ask for question.
Yeah, good point.
I don't know that we normally don't vote to approve them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We normally haven't, but.
All right. Well, in that case, what about comments? Raise your hand. You've got the raise your hand button. Any of the owners that are on the call, do we see anybody that has a question regarding financials?
I do have two. One from Mr. Kimball. Mr. Kimball, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you had a question on financials.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay. It was mentioned about for the funds coming in from the retreat and the higher legal costs. I'm just wondering if that has come to an end yet, or are we almost done with it?
At
It's
this
very-
point, sorry. Carl.
Go ahead, Paul.
So there have been some final documents were signed last week regarding the parking easements, which were part of the sales contract. So, and that was the latest, biggest ticket item in that regard.
Okay. And Carl, you concur?
Yeah, there may be a few minor things, but that should be the end of it.
Yeah, in which case then there will be the obligation to relinquish the small portion in the back of the parking area to them so that they can decide how they want to develop it. And so I think that's something we can look forward to seeing in the future as they decide what to do with the remainder of the space that hasn't been developed yet. All right, and then I see Stu.
Yep, Stu, Mr. Kimball, thank you. Stu, you are allowed to talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Stu, we can't hear you.
Stu, I believe you're unmuted now. Did you have a question?
Perhaps he stepped away for a moment.
One last time, Stu. It looks like you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
You can't hear me. I don't know why.
Did you have a question you wanted to put in the chat box, Stu?
And Stu, are you on a phone or are you on a computer? Because if you're on a phone, maybe you've toggled the physical mute button on your software.
Well, he's showing unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're calling from a phone line, you can be on. Anyways, it's neither here nor there. He's on a computer.
Using the phone's mute button.
Yeah.
As opposed to *6 and *9.
But he's unmuted on the computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stu, if you have a question, go ahead and throw it just in that chat box then, because it doesn't look like we're able to hear you.
I just want to know quickly about the garbage budget. Is it resort or HOA?
We have two different budgets. One is obviously for the valet garbage, and the other one is for the pickup, which will be monitored by weight. So Republic comes out to pick up the containers, the dumpster, when it reaches a certain weight. And obviously with heavier occupancies, in addition to an influx of new owners having bulk trash, which they pay for, obviously. But that's why that number stayed high throughout the year. So with increase in occupancies, the garbage itself will always flex. Valet trash is always the same.
And which side of our budget does either one go on? So
everything comes out of club. So
perfect.
So if you look at the majority of the cost, other than security and valet trash and trash removal, this is all in HOA, but all the other major expenses are in the club. Does that answer your question, Ben?
Yeah, I was just trying to reiterate the way that Stu was asking.
It looks like Stu said thank you.
All right, very good. I don't see any other hands raised. So perhaps we can move on to May delinquent accounts.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Watson here. So I'm going to get to the delinquent accounts for May. At the start of the month of May, delinquencies were at a 3.2%, including the units that were on lien. Without those on lien, we were at a 2%. At the time of delinquencies, including lien, was 1.3%, and without the liens down to 0.1%. A total of 7 units are currently on lien with Larson's office. One of the homes is on our age list. The one home that is on our 90-day list is, which I'll read out later. The total for the month in-house and the offices collected was $23,660.48. Are there any questions or doubts regarding the May delinquent accounts?
No,
No.
I'm not seeing any. So do you want to proceed then with our 90-day?
Perfect. Yes, sir. So I'll be reading off the Regal Palms Owners Association Inc. Board Resolution. We're at section 720, 305, 3, and 4. Florida statutes authorizes the Board of Directors to suspend a member's voting rights and suspend their rights to use the common amenities and facilities of the association if the owner is more than 90-day delinquent in the payment of any monetary obligation owed to the association. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Board of Directors of the Regal Palms Owners Association, Inc. at a duly called meeting of the Board of Directors held on the 3rd day of June of 2022 as follows. The following members' units are delinquent more than 90 days in the payment of assessments and or other monetary obligations to the association. The home is Palermo 334. Effective immediately, said member units voting rights in all association matters, access to common amenities, club facilities, cable, television, and Wi-Fi services are suspended until all delinquencies are paid in full to the association. These suspensions shall extend to the members, guests, and invitees to the property. Members' mail service at the club front desk will be suspended after notice, providing an opportunity for member to make other arrangements for mail delivery. The association's property manager is hereby authorized to notify these members of these suspensions pursuant to Chapter 720, 305, Section 5, Florida statutes. The letter will include notice that mail service at the club front desk will be suspended after 15 days. This resolution will be adopted by a majority vote of the Board of Directors of the Regal Palms Owners Association, Inc. on the date as set forth above.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I know that's a lot of reading.
Thank you.
Do I have anyone who'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve that resolution?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Carl, second.
I'll second.
Ben's hand is up.
I unmuted first, Carol.
So in that case, all in favor of adopting the resolution as proposed?
Aye.
All right, thank you. The motion is, or the resolution is adopted. So the next item of old business is the fitness upgrades and the empty room proposal.
Yes, so the fitness center looks very well. The new part of the fitness center, I should say, the old training room. Our maintenance team did a wonderful job. The floors are obviously the noise dampening floors have been installed, as well as the wall noise damping wall tiles have been installed in connection with the spa, so to reduce the noise for them in the treatment rooms. That has been completed. The equipment is ordered, and we have not received a delivery date yet, but everything has been ordered, which was approved by the board. And we all know with the current situation, some of the items are back ordered, and but we should be able to get the equipment prior to the next board meeting.
All right, very good. Any questions on that update regarding the fitness upgrades? I don't see any hands up either from attendees.
Correct, no hands.
So in that case, we can move on to new business. And the first item of new business is the annual general meeting for 2022, release of the nomination form.
Yes, the nomination forms will be posted today after the meeting. And please, for everyone who will put in a nomination, please make sure that the due date for us to receive it at the office is July 15th, 2022. So that is the due date for us to receive all nomination forms.
All right.
Paul, the only question I have is in number 1, it says you should be in good standing. Don't our bylaws require you must be in good standing?
Oh, no, it definitely, you must be in good standing. I think it was just more of a word choice. We'll change it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's probably safer to say must so that they don't think that there's a subjective nature to that decision.
I agree.
And
Yeah,
just
we
to
will adjust
clarify,
that before posting it.
and
Okay.
just to clarify, Paul, the July 15th deadline date is to be included on the electronic ballot as well as the communications from the board about the actual election. Did we sort through any kind of, I think it was the legalities of if someone chose to nominate on the floor or something else, they can still choose to run for the board after July 15th. It's just they won't be included in all that documentation and the electronic ballot,
Correct.
if that's correct.
They will not be included. The reason it's July 15th is because by then we need to start finalizing the packages for the annual general meeting, which will be sent out in April. In August, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right, good point to make there, Ben. Appreciate that. So our next item of business would be the fining committee, open position.
Correct. So we are actually announcing, because I know that the board had approved for Mr. Father Dave in Terralago 210. He has joined the fining committee. I believe that was about a month or so ago. We do want to announce that there is a potential opening though for that committee. So that if there is anyone that is interested in joining the fining committee, again, you must be in good standing. We will need a decent amount of time in the next couple of months as some of these clean sweeps are coming to a head and they are being sent to the fining committee. So we will need at least a couple of hours from you and the upcoming months just so that we can get through those. But if there is anyone interested, please email myself or Ms. Ninoshka so that we can go ahead and pass your name along. But again, the official announcement for Terralago 210, Mr. Father Dave, was added to the committee about a month ago.
All right, very good. Thank you for making that announcement. I don't see any comments regarding the fining committee. How about if we move on to the architectural committee?
Yes, so there is just one switch for the architectural committee. They have Mr. Frank Grigoli at 2306 Calabria. I know he is in the middle of selling his house, if not already had sold his unit. So they have suggested Mr. Dean Julia from Calabria 4103 to replace him on the art committee.
Okay, any discussion from board members on that transition, and do we have any interest in entertaining a motion to appoint him to that architectural committee?
I would just like to say that I've taken into account in the discussions the architectural committee's actual recommendation. So I'm happy to discuss that, but I do believe we have a hand raised.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Mr. Brad Gorman, you have been allotted to talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Yes,
Yes.
we can. We have a very active architectural committee that meets and talks weekly. So they are more than apt to give the board direct suggestions, where with the social committee and the communications committee, some of the committees we did release for owners to submit their names. Unfortunately, those committees, we didn't hear anything from them as committee members were lost, so we had to just take in more action and ask for recommendations from owners or volunteers. So we will be nominating some of those people in our upcoming committee ones, but with the art committee, again, they're very active. They speak weekly, so they send the board suggestions just as any committee is allowed to do.
And in saying that, just like any member can also write to the board to ask about joining any of those committees. So we take all of that into account and then we discuss it here.
Oh yeah, it's in your allotment with a committee member. Again, we're not requesting from the art committee for people to replace. It's just when they see that a role is gone or someone has moved, they take the initiative to try to figure out who would be best placed and if anyone has shown interest in the past. But again, as Ben stated, anyone is allowed at any point in time to send to the board or send to guest services their interest in any committees.
And Justy, can I just confirm, a while back, earlier this year on one of our open calls, we talked about committees and the fact that we would be looking at the committees themselves. And I believe we sent out something on Dwelling Live maybe a month or two ago.
Yes, I do believe we did. And that had to do with the social committee, the pool and rec committee, and the communications committee. Again, just because we didn't have that initiative from the actual committee to present us somebody.
Gotcha.
Again, it's just of course, not a problem.
All right, appreciate the comments. And so if that concludes the architectural committee, we can move on to the social committee for updates.
Did we actually decide anything or do we do that at a later date?
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, going back to architectural committee. Thank you, Ben.
No worries.
So are we in a position to go ahead and remove Frank Rigoli and add Dean Julia?
I would motion for that. I'm happy with that recommendation based off of the architectural committee and the recommendations that we've received.
Okay.
And I'm second that motion based off of the information that has been presented.
All right. Thank you, Carol. In that case, all in favor of that change?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Ben, for making sure we close the loop on that.
No worries.
So then the next item of business would be another committee, the social committee. So what are the updates that we have on that committee?
So board, I'm not sure if you saw the email I had sent with all of the volunteers who sent over. I did have 3 highlighted for the social committee. I wasn't sure, again, if you were able to look into that, but I do have 3 names that would like to be added to the social committee. And that is Judabelle Rojas from La Mirage 579, Laura Limpoma from Terralago 251, and Caitlin Dems from Palermo 110. Those were 3 of the names that had volunteered for that committee and that we were looking to add.
Can I also just interject with this? Because this was a committee that Kathy was chairing, I was wondering if we should look at actually, completely overhauling this committee in general. What does the board think in appointing new members in general?
Well, I think you make a good point to the extent that, Kathy was a representative on the board of directors. I'm open to that. Any other comments from other board members?
No, no other comments. Yeah, it's something to look into or consider the reappointment of members or restructuring that team or that committee.
Yeah, there's quite a few extra people who have put forward their names to volunteer. And with Kathy moving on, it might make sense to look at just starting a social committee with new members.
Okay.
It could be after the AGM, then after the organizational meeting, when the new board of directors is obviously set for this year, maybe that's a good point then to discuss it there. Since Kathy, as a board member, was chairing that committee, maybe then one of the board members would be stepping forward and would like to chair that committee as well.
I think that's a good suggestion, Paul.
So from what I'm hearing then, the committee, as it currently exists, could continue to conduct any business, although they wouldn't have a chair necessarily.
And a board representative right now.
Now, are we okay to add the additional 3 members or no? If not, we are down to 2 technical members.
What's the total number of members for that committee?
There isn't an allotted amount.
It's not?
I always just try to keep it as an odd number, so with voting ends, but there isn't an allotted amount for a social committee.
I have no objection to those 3 owners that are looking to be on the committee.
And so that would be the recommendation of guest services, at least, that these 3 appear to be good candidates to serve on that committee. Is that right, Jesse?
Correct, yes.
Okay, well, in that case, do I have a motion to appoint the 3 members that she listed at those unit numbers to the social committee?
I still am a little lost as to what exactly we're doing, because we have 2 existing committee members with no board member, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
So we would add 3 more names to a committee to make 5 committee members with no board member on the committee.
That would be correct.
Okay. So then, because is it not normal that a board member would be on the committee itself?
Paul, does
on the other committees, if you look at the finding committee, that has no board member.
The finding committee can't have a board member. The finding committee is a unique one.
But the architectural committee,
It used
at
to
this
be
point,
Kathy also.
it has no one either.
Okay.
All right, so Paul, if you don't see an obligation to have a board member on the social committee, we could at least increase its numbers, since it's down to 2, pending, a new board constituting after the AGM, and they can reevaluate going forward how that should be handled.
That would be a good suggestion from our side.
Okay.
Before we go to any motions, though, we would need to look at hands, because there is one raised.
Oh, excellent point.
Mr. Gorman, you are released to talk. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes.
Correct. So right now we don't have one. The board is going to discuss that. We're kind of in the same position as the social committee at this point.
I think all the committees serve at the pleasure of the board. I think when a new board is constituted after the September election, all committees really get reviewed, and whether or not the new board wants to completely replace everybody that's on any committee is clearly their privilege.
And so if unless I'm misunderstanding, it sounds like we're comfortable with the committees as constituted, with the exception at this moment, talking about the social committee, that to be social, you have to have a group, and it's getting pretty small. And so I think there's no objection to adding these three individuals. At least guest services, feels comfortable with them and has vetted them. So do we want to move forward with a motion to make any changes to the social committee at this time?
I think, just to further clarify Brad's question, the liaison would be through Jesse or Paul, if there is no member of the board sitting on it.
Correct. Again, with the art committee, they are very much self-sufficient. They talk on a weekly basis, and we're involved already in all of their emails and meetings. So they're a pretty self-sufficient committee compared to some of the other ones.
I don't have a problem with putting these three people on now. Again, the new board can completely revamp all the committees if it chooses to.
Okay. So in that case, do I have a motion to add the three individuals previously disclosed by Jesse to the social committee, or?
Yes, I'd
I'll
like
make
to
a
make a motion.
I'll go for it, Carol.
Motion that we add Judah Bell, Laura, and Caitlin to the social committee as it is present.
Oh, thank you, Carol. Do I have a second on that?
I'll
Ben?
second.
Thank you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So it's unanimous to add those three members. And Jesse, I understand that you will be the one reaching out to them to bring them up to speed on what that means.
Yeah, Ms. Ninoshka will be looping all three of them in with the rest of the committee members and giving them, we have a little committee onboarding sheet. So she'll give that to them and add them on to their already scheduled social committee meetings.
Great. All right. Thank you. So moving on then, we have the Pool and Recreation Committee. What's the update on that?
So with the Pool and Recreation Committee, we have sent over, and I believe the board already had reviewed the resolution. So once we get a motion for approval on that resolution, I do have a couple names that I had sent over your way. I'm not sure, again, if you were able to take a look at those names, but we do have suggestions on that Pool and Recreation Committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just to clarify, the draft resolution was for us to have a pool and recreational committee that would be a standing committee to help with the process of looking into expanded amenities, community recreational facilities, those kind of things. And that's how the committee the draft resolution was put together.
Okay, so the other board of directors had a chance to look at the resolution?
Yeah, I personally don't see the need to make it a standing committee. I mean, all the committees serve at the pleasure of the board. If it's something they're looking at any point in time of increasing the facilities or modifying the pool, they'll constitute the committee to do it.
Yeah, the only reason I had suggested a standing committee versus an ad hoc was just the scope of work. So an ad hoc committee, as soon as the scope of work is completed, let's say it was to add additional amenities to the recreation area, then it would technically be dissolved at that point. Whereas in making it a standing committee and kind of adjusting the wording in the resolution, it allows us to have a committee that continues on even after certain aspects of a project are completed. That was just my thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I don't see that I want to burden any future board that they have a standing committee that may not have any need if we're not doing anything in the pool and recreational area at that time.
And would the standing board, would the board not have the ability to dissolve a committee if they no longer see need for it?
If they do, then why make it standing rather than ad hoc? I don't understand what you're making it. If an ad hoc committee comes and goes, if you're saying a standing committee can come and go, then what's the difference?
The only difference in my mind would be the focus of this committee wouldn't just be on a single project, but on projects as a whole. So expanding the community amenities versus a pool expansion committee. That's really in my mind. I'm fine with either way. I just suggested that by making it a standing committee, it allows us to expand the scope from just the pool and splash pad.
Okay, but again, we can do that on our own. We can expand its scope at any time.
Yeah, we would just have to, in a meeting, add to the scope of work.
So I don't see anything in the resolution that really kind of speaks to the concept of it being a standing committee, or that it results in playing by any different rules than our ad hoc committees do.
Gotcha. I thought the other committees were all standing committees, like social, communications, architectural, that kind of stuff. So if there's no difference, then there's no difference.
I don't know that we've ever designated them as either standing or ad hoc. We've just created a committee.
We go.
I
think
the only situation where you had some sort of committee that was like a temporary was, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you were looking for a management company and weren't there owners involved in some sort of committee, but it ended as soon as all of that was figured out.
Yeah, that could be.
I don't think it was the RFP committee, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, or something like that. Correct.
So I'm fine. We're saying the same thing here, Carl, for the most part. So let's just not even specify standing or ad hoc, but the draft resolution is there with the scope of work.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have the draft resolution, and there has been an interest, presented in creating a pool and recreation committee. I'm wondering if we should get some comments from owners, if there are any, before seeing whether someone wants to put forth a motion to create this committee.
And while we're waiting for hands, I noticed that it mentions in consultation with the finance committee. Can anyone tell me who's on the finance committee?
Carol and Cobb. At one point.
Okay. And it was intentionally 2 board members so that it wasn't a quorum.
Correct.
And again, at the time it was created, I thought its purpose was simply the finance committee for review of the proposed budget.
Correct.
If we're still a committee, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think we've taken action to formally dissolve it or anything. And I don't know that it said that it was only for, but if it did say it was only for that or 1 year, then so be it.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing any hands raised. With that then, do we want to take, go ahead.
There's a few comments. So there's some comments in the chat box rather than raised hands from members. Do you want me to read those?
Sure.
Bob Kimball says, I like the thoughts of forming a committee. Kirsten Crosby says, it makes sense to me to form a committee. However, I like the idea of symmetry. Not sure what symmetry would look like in terms of this, unless it's the style of pool, but yeah.
I think it might be that it's just like any other committee. We're not putting labels on them, maybe.
Gotcha. Symmetry between the committees is exactly what she said.
Ah, there you go. Okay, so those are some good comments. Sounds like there is some support from ownership to create a committee that can kind of look at these topics. So do any of the board members want to propose adopting this resolution? And if so, what initial members would we want to point to it?
I'll put forward a motion to adopt the draft resolution for the instating or the start or formation of the Pool and Recreation Committee.
Okay. Do you want to couple that with a list of initial committee members?
I could. I know we received quite a few people who put in their feedback for wanting to join the committee. And so the three names that I was reviewing and I was chatting with Jesse about was Keith Tree of Calabria 1347, Joseph Skelly of LA 427, not sure what.
La Mirage,
La Mirage.
sorry.
There we go. And Richard Dixon from
Cambria 346.
Cambria 346. Those were the three names that Jesse and I had discussed.
All right, do you want to add making them members of the new committee to your motion?
Those three names to be added as members of the committee.
Great, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we got a tie. So I'm going to give this one to Carl. Oh, come on. I don't think we have Carl down for anything yet. So Carl seconds it. All in favor of creating this committee with these three initial committee members?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the committee is created. And so you'll handle onboarding with those three?
Correct. Yes.
All right, very good. In that case, we move on to the next item, which is the mulch proposal for 2022.
Yes, as it was voted on last year that the mulch project was postponed due to the pandemic to this year. And obviously we received the quotes, which we had sent to the board for review, and we just need to have an approval on the proposals so we can get the project scheduled.
Now, when you say two proposals, you don't mean two different companies giving us
it's the two different
bids.
areas. Sorry.
The two different areas, but one company with a quote.
Yes.
Our current landscaping company.
Yes.
And the two quotes are $3,000 for the clubhouse and $15,000 for all of the homes in phase 1 through 5.
Yes.
And this includes all of the labor as well?
That's the whole project.
Okay. The one thing that concerned me was that there's a clause on both of these, on the 598 home project one that says, due to the rapid increase in pricing from fuel, labor and delivery costs, our price is subject to change. I just want to find out, does that mean that the price can change without notice before the work is commenced? Or?
I just think he wants us to understand that if we don't sign it and approve it, that if it waits and kind of, we need another one, then he would maybe have to change the costs.
That is correct, Ben, because he called for something else. I had a conversation with Rick last week, and he was asking specifically about the proposals, if there was any movement so he can order the product.
And I do notice on the two proposals, the expiration date is 4/29 on the first one, and the other one is 5/29.
5/29 was given. It should have been both 5/29, but it was given because he knew when the board meeting was originally scheduled. So, but
gotcha.
He would hold the price. But that's why he asked me last week if the meeting took place, and if he would get an approval. That's why he had called.
Did we receive any other offers from other companies?
We did last year, and when we reviewed all of this, we just deferred it because of the pandemic. We wanted to be sure that we didn't outspend ourselves until everything was back on track. So I think we've already reviewed and selected the company. It was just we wanted to defer it until we were certain of our finances.
And because those due dates are already expired, is he going to honor that's the same? Is Rick going to honor the same proposed cost?
That's what I just said. He called me and asked if it was approved because he obviously will honor the price when I told him that the meeting is today.
Yeah, I would suggest that if we adopt them, that we line through the due to rapid increase language and sign it that way so that we're committed to the 3,000 and 15,000 with no increases.
Fair enough. We will do that.
Yeah. Okay. I would suggest that as well. I do know there's an attendee's hand up. My quick question, Paul, you're very familiar with these kind of projects. Is it in line for $18,000 to do the scope of what we're looking to do? It looks like it's, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on it.
It's definitely the best price we can get.
Okay. Good.
All right, Jesse, we've got a couple people with
Yeah,
hands
it does look like we have hands. Mrs. McCreary. I have released you to talk. If you want to go ahead and hit *6 to unmute yourself. I know you've had issues.
Hi, Jesse. Hi, everybody. I have a question here with the mulch. I thought we had discussed about not doing the mulch anymore around the houses because we said that it was kind of a waste of money. It fades quickly, it washes away, and I thought we were using that money and we were maybe going to save it in order to maybe at some point put the rock in instead. It was kind of like, it was almost like no sooner than you get it in, you know, in a month or less, that mulch, it doesn't even look like there's any mulch there. Just your all's, I thought that is what we had discussed in the past about the mulch. I don't know what your all's ideal is or if y'all thought about that, but the mulch is really, it's kind of a waste of money. By the time you put it down, it's brown, it's dark brown, it looks like dirt. The sun fades it really quickly and it washes away.
And I just mentioned,
we did
discuss it.
Yeah, we did discuss it, and we also looked into the rock as an alternative, and the cost of the rock was extremely prohibitive.
I think we referred to it as sticker shock.
It worked out to 11 years.
It
worked out to 11 years of not putting mulch down just to meet the cost of the rock.
Well, then let me ask you this. Is it still cost efficient or still smart to spend that much money to put mulch down if it's not really going to make a difference in the community within a month or less?
Visually, I think it has a big impact on, like you're talking about, it fades quickly, but in terms of the practicality of what the mulch does in order to work with the hedges and the other existing landscaping that we have, it does provide a level of protection, other things as mulch does. It may not look as pretty as other options, but there is reasons why we do so to save in the long run on costs of replacing some of the landscaping that we have installed already.
Right. I've also, one of the management companies I used in the past, they weren't in favor as much on the mulch as were because they said it kind of draws bugs. It kind of gets more bugs around the place. I know we've had insect issues in the past, and I don't know if maybe that's part of I know Florida, you're going to get bugs, but I just wanted to throw that thought out at you as well, is, you know, the mulch can create more of a pest, you know, bugs or whatever issue. Just my thoughts. I didn't know if we wanted to go to that much money to put something out that's not going to serve purpose for very long. And just thought I would throw it out there for y'all to think about before you all approve or not approve.
I think to Ben's point though, Pam, it does serve a purpose. It may not be the prettiest looking after a few months, but it does serve a purpose of protecting the landscaping.
Especially during the colder climate and weather, it works out to just around $25.50 a unit for the year when you factor in all of the houses, which if you go to the store and try and get the mulch and other stuff, it's not a large price difference between having them do it for us.
Well, quick question then. If it's more of a purpose for when it's colder out, would we be smarter to do it more during the fall so that it's still there and lasts more during the cold weather, opposed to doing it more at the beginning of summer when it's hot? Does that, and it kind of goes away? Does that make sense?
Oh, would you have any experience, or do you know if Rick, because I know Pam's on the architectural committee as well and she communicates with Rick, is there any benefit to doing it now other than the fact that we didn't do it last year and so earlier in the season may be better for us?
I just know out of historically in my community I live in, we have 5,000 homes and it's always done around that time. So we just had our mulch done between March and April. So, and the communities I recall we had before, Laura can probably concur on that, it was always around that time.
Yeah, I
So
just think
perhaps we should
the schedules of the past couple of years.
So perhaps we should just make sure that we're reconfirming that we're doing it at the best time of year to make the maximum benefit. I'm not sure what that was.
Not sure who that was, but maybe one of the suggestions would be that we do exactly what you're saying, Glenn. We look at approving this, but also looking at getting some confirmation of when the best time of year is to do it. Because I know the last time we did, it was
2019.
Yep,
2019.
Yep,
So it's been
2020 was
two
canceled
full
because of
seasons.
COVID, and then 2021, it was voted to reallocate the money to common area.
Okay, so I think that addresses Kirsten's question.
Correct.
All right. So
There
Go
was
ahead.
another hand raised that went down.
yeah, I don't know if that was unintentional.
Currently, we have no hands raised. So if somebody had raised their hand and wanted to speak, please go ahead and do so again.
Oh, there it is. Mr. Gorman, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so with that, then, are we in a position to make a motion and adopt some of the comments that we identified? I think that it included striking out the language about due to the rapid increase in pricing, and then only approving the amount on the two proposals.
It sounded like you just made that motion.
Well, would someone else like to make that motion? Because normally the president doesn't, or I should say that the chairman normally doesn't make motions.
Gotcha.
Small group you can though, Glenn.
Okay, small group, I will go ahead and defer to Carl on that and make that motion.
I'll second the motion that Glenn put together.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion approves unanimously. So we've got the mulch taken care of. And of course, Paul, you'll make sure that they've reconsidered whether or not they're doing it at the appropriate time of the year.
I only signed it without the language.
Yeah. Okay. So RDP proposal, new PMS system.
Yes, so I sent over to the board a proposal for a new property management system. We are currently using IQware. It has been, I think, on this property for quite some time, even prior to guest services coming. And it is an older system. It has caused us a lot of issues in the past 3 months. It has delayed arrivals. It has made more work on the back end with issues with tracking payments and such, and integration with our credit card readers, along with integration with our Solto and our wristband machines. So we have been looking for a program for quite some time. I've tested a couple of them out. RDP is the best thing that I have been able to find, and it is pretty comparable into payment of what we are paying IQware. It actually comes in a little bit lower. Right now we're at $3.15 per room or per door for each unit for IQware, and RDP is coming in at right around $3. So a little bit less. Now there is a onboarding of $7,500 that would need to be paid. And it would be an annual payment of the amount rather than, I think, Paul, we're on what, a quarterly right now with
Quarterly,
IQware.
yes.
So it would need to be an annual at this rate. If you do monthly or quarterly, it does increase a little bit. So our recommendation would be to do the annual. Just some positives just to run through. And again, I know the board had received this, but just for some other owners, we're currently not a cloud-based system, meaning that management cannot access the actual system without being on site. So this new system, RDP, would be cloud-based. In addition, you would have an owner's portal in which not only you would be able to view your systems and your reservations, as we already have right now, but you'd actually be able to input your own reservations. So that owner's portal could be shared with your management companies. And instead of having to send all of your information to the reservations email and our agents inputting every single arrival, owners and management companies could do that themselves. There is also a self check-in I guess, self-check-in, check-out type of add-on that we could potentially work into our system where your guests could receive the registration cards ahead of time. They could fill everything out ahead of time. So all they would need to do is come in and receive their wristbands. We also have automated texting that would be included in the system. So in case of an emergency or in case of us wanting to remind our guest on site, everyone's number that's in the system, we could send an automated text, whether that's an arrival text of welcome to Regal Palms when they check in, whether that's a, hey, it's 4th of July and you are not allowed to have fireworks type of text, but whatever we would see fit, we would be able to actually send messages out to all of our guests. Ownership of units was a large thing that I was having an issue with finding for a property management system. A lot of the time, because we are such a special property where even though you have that rental guest in there, you have the back end of the ownership of the unit. This portal actually has all of that. Training and IT support will be a huge turnaround with RDP compared to IQware. They have a lot of onboarding training online where IQware has virtually nothing. Along with their IT support, we would have a one-on-one service with RDP, where right now we're running into issues with having a knowledgeable person from IQware assist us with our issues. I know some of the biggest questions from the board was whether it configured with our Salto and our RFID system, so our wristbands, and it does. And then the other question was, we just received new EMV card readers probably a couple months ago. And we are still working with Shift 4, which we would have to move from Fusebox to. Now, again, cost of Shift 4 compared to Fusebox, which is our back-end credit card provider, they would be pretty much the same. We're just right now waiting on Shift 4 response on if our EMV readers would be able to stay with us. Because we did outright purchase those. They are our property. We're just making sure that they're able to configure with those EMV readers so there wouldn't be any other additional cost other than that onboarding. But again, we are waiting on that response from them.
And a lot of the information you've just provided, you answered on email as well for us. So thanks for that, Jesse. With the current credit card readers, how much, I remember we approved the expense, but how much was the actual credit card readers we just purchased? Estimated?
I want to say around $7,000, $8,000, I think, for all of them. And we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We received 5 of them.
But the total bill was $7,000 or $8,000.
I think it was around that. Correct.
I don't think it was that high. That sounds high.
I thought it was in the threes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. 3,500.
Yeah.
It's about 3,500. Yeah.
Maybe I'm thinking of
little
something else though.
Okay.
And we may be able to utilize our existing. We're just waiting for clarification from Shift 4.
And if we can't, there's always the option for us to resell those because of the potential cost savings if we had to go to this system. One of the things that Jesse, you had mentioned earlier was with guests being able, or with owners being able to input their own reservations, that could cut down on a lot of the time required for the onboarding at the front desk and allow us to be more efficient with those staff members taking on other responsibilities and possibly cost savings.
Yes,
And
yes.
and the check-in process as well.
And yes, the check-in, the arrival process should be cut down again if it's used to what the full extent. Again, with them being able to receive those registration cards in advance and physically be able to pay the resort fees online in advance.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Cuts down that arrival time. Cuts down that arrival time to just minutes. They receive all the rules ahead of time. All they have to actually do is get the wristbands and parking passes from us.
And is the quote that we received based on taking advantage of all those options, or
Yes.
Okay, so all the options you described we would benefit from, they're already included in the quote that you had sent over.
Correct, yes.
Except for the add-ons of directly managing their bookings in the system, correct?
No, they can still do that. The only thing that I took off from that end was there was a way for us to interface with Airbnb and some of those other reservation systems. So I took that off of that portion just because, again, there was no need for the HOA to physically pay for that portion of it.
And the only other question before I'm sure there's lots of owners who have some questions is when it comes to the actual chargeback issue that we've been seeing more and more with our machines, which is why we got these new ones, as well as individual owners who have had difficulty with getting, fraud chargebacks and such. If somebody pays a resort fee through the app, is there a verification of their credit card information or a secure way to verify their ID, or would that still happen at the front desk? Because I know in my case, I've had 2 chargebacks this year, and part of it was we were missing some of those keys.
We still require identification to be listed on the reg card, so that would still be a step that they would be taking up at the front. I can say with a lot of our chargebacks, the only ones we are now seeing is usually the wristbands and the RFID, so the charge that happens after the fact. We're winning some of them we're not, but those are the only ones, at least our resort fee ones, we're able to retain now with those EMV readers.
And I think Ben's point was specific to if we're going to allow the owner or their guest to pay those online, at their leisure, at their home or somewhere, do we still have protections in the way that they've paid it that would prevent them from winning a chargeback?
Yes, correct. And that would be that license that we were still taking at check-in.
Okay. The only other question would be, my brain has just slipped me. You were saying the chargebacks is how we take those deposits for the wristbands. Instead of calling it a deposit, if we actually made it a charge and then a credit back afterwards, that would actually prevent us from getting those chargebacks, would it not? Because they're actually being charged, not just a hold. So let's say $10 a card or whatever else. Would that be a solution to possibly stop the chargeback? Because you'd have a signature saying, yeah, I'm renting these 10 units.
That is definitely a potential. Now, just to be clear, we don't currently, the only hold that goes on a card is for TAL cards. And that's been since we have gotten here. So the wristbands, say you're getting 10 wristbands, we're not physically putting a hold on your card for those wristbands. We charge you after the fact and we count and we maintain and make sure we get all of them back. But there is no physical hold going for those wristbands. Now, if it's something that the board would like to do moving forward, it's just some verbiage we would have to get out to the management and the owners, just so they're aware that, if you are, have 10 people, you are having $100 hold on that card for each of those wristbands. But that's definitely something we could do.
I'm open to the discussion point of it if it means, sorry.
Yeah, I think Ben's point is to not make it a hold, actually charge it.
62 Orlando.
And somebody doesn't have to actually make it a charge for the $100. And then when they return them, we credit their account. So they've actually signed the charge for their 10 wristbands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we currently do that with the TAL card. So again, it would make sense that we could add that along with the wristbands. We would just need to get some verbiage out just to the, like I said, to the owners and MCs so that they're aware that that's.
But Jesse, I'm not talking a deposit or a hold.
Let me answer what you asked, Ben.
Sorry.
I think we need to look into that, because if we take $100 in for 10 wristbands, so it's income. So then if you're going to give them the money back, so from a transactional standpoint, from a financial transactional standpoint, you might get audit questions at one point by the end of the year. The auditor might come back, why do you have 10,000 charges of $100 and you refunded 9,500?
Right, but the actual charges aren't taking place. It's a pre-auth is what we're doing.
I know, but Ben was asking if he could charge. That was Ben's question. If he would charge
my question,
up front. Yeah. So, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Paul.
Would be helpful though. Now that you have brought that up again, as long as owners are aware that we're pre-authing for all of the wristbands, it might help them physically signing off that they're pre-authing $100 if that they don't return all 10 of them.
Before we take
in answer to yours, I'm not concerned if you have credits against it.
I was going to say, before we take too much more time on that particular part of it, Jesse, could you give me a ballpark of how many chargebacks we've lost roughly fee-wise this year, if you have a ballpark?
Yes, we do. Paul, do you have the financials right in
Yeah.
front of you?
I have it, so far, $470 year to date.
That's very minimal. I was thinking that it was significantly higher. I think with our old terminals, it was significantly higher. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with not carrying on this discussion. I removed my
And
comments.
And it was, Ben, it was higher last year, but that's before we had readers that were PCI compliant. The PCI
Okay.
compliance is what's improved our situation. That's why it's been reduced so dramatically.
Okay,
Great.
Okay, thank you.
so I don't know that we even have comments from owners. Do any of the owners have comments on the new PMS system that's been described?
A hand went up once. It was Mr. Gorman's.
You don't see it. Oh, there it goes. Go ahead, Mr. Gorman.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
All right, very
We
good.
just want to make sure because other people, if they've raised their hand and hit a raise again, it lowers and, just making sure everyone gets their chance to speak.
All right.
If there's no other comments, I'll make a motion that we approve it.
As proposed. Do I have a second?
I second it, and making sure that we're including the training cost that was additional.
Okay, Carl, do you want to amend your motion to add the training in?
I believe that's the way she presented it, but yes, including the training.
Okay, all right. And then in that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's approved unanimously. I noticed that it's 12:22, and I think some might have a hard stop at 12:30.
I do.
We do have some important discussions that might carry on far beyond that. I'm wondering if it might be appropriate at this point to address the position left open by Carol's resignation.
Kathy.
All right,
Kathy.
in that case.
Kathy, not Carol.
Oh, sorry, Kathy. All right. It's long COVID. That's what I'll blame it on. But anyhow, so what we have now then is we have a situation where a position on the board is open. The board does have within its power the authority to fill that position, pending the next election by the owners. And so the discussion at this point is whether or not we want to exercise that authority to appoint someone to fill the position.
And to clarify, this would be filling until the AGM, and which is in September.
That's correct.
Yeah. So whoever, if they chose to run, would need to submit their nomination form like normal. I think it's definitely something for us to do. There's a lot of work to get done, especially over the next few months with the new committee that we're starting and other things. So I think it's well worth us talking about filling that role.
Okay. Any other comments from board members on whether we should take this on right now? I know she sent it yesterday, so it's before this meeting so that we can have that discussion if we want to. I think it's far enough in advance that there's, like Ben says, a lot of work that it will come up, even some stuff that we don't even realize right now that's going to come up in the subsequent board meeting before the meeting. So I'm not opposed to filling it. The question then would be, do we have any particular owners that, we've got a working relationship that we know from the past that maybe we've had conversations before about the board that we would want to consider. I know some people have reached out since Kathy provided her notice. And so do we have anyone in particular that the other members of the board feel comfortable proposing to fill that important seat?
Yeah, if nobody else has, I'll go ahead first and just say that there is an owner who I felt has been very involved. They've got a lot of experience when it comes to proposals. They're involved in our board meetings. They've served on some committees as well. And they did run once before. That's Joe Skelly. And so I would suggest to the board that Joe may be a good a good replacement for Kathy, especially within the context of being able to join the board and help us as we're looking at some of the larger contracts and such we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
I believe Joe's on the call.
Okay. Well, anybody have any comments about Joe or about anyone else that they think might be a good fit? All right. Hearing none, we do have one hand up before we take any kind of action on this item. If we can go ahead and take care of any hands that are up.
Go ahead, Mr. Gorman.
I saw an email. Yes, thank you, Brad.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Brad, is there anyone else that has comments? Not to force anyone to make a comment if they don't want to.
No more hands.
Okay, so there's no more
Oh,
hands.
there is a hand that went up.
Okay,
There's more.
on short notice, no pun intended.
You are unmuted, Mr. Michael Short. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now by either hitting that little microphone button, or if you're on your phone, *6. Again, you are allotted to talk. I'm going to go ahead and send you an ask to unmute. There you go.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I just listened to your comments about a provisional board member to replace Kathy. I think it's probably a good idea in the interim to have somebody to volunteer, and then maybe at the AGM they can then go forward with their ideas and proposals and ideas for the resort as all the other board members do.
I appreciate that Ben pointed out the fact that the seat itself is up this AGM. And so even if someone were to be appointed to the board right now, they would still need to get that nomination statement submitted so that they could be considered at the AGM. Does that speak to your comment?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's 100%.
Okay, thank you.
And just in context of that, Carol and Glenn's seat are up this year. And so this position would be appointed to the board. And then if we do make that change, then I would suggest we have an organizational discussion as our next piece of business to determine what we do with who serves in what role.
Paul, do you want to talk about the organizational meeting? Is that something we would call and have separate from this meeting?
Yes, we would do that. We would schedule that as soon as the decision is made today. We would schedule.
Oh, so we couldn't do that as a new business item?
The decision, if you would decide to bring Joe Skelly on today, then we would schedule an organizational meeting, and then during the organizational meeting, it will decide which positions are going to who of the board members.
Okay, I'd like to say Joe has my support. I unfortunately have a very hard stop. I have a doctor's appointment that I must go to. So I'll be leaving.
Okay. All right, so Carl, is that your motion then?
Sure.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
All right, all in favor of appointing Joe to the board?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Thanks, Carl.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
It does look like I have a hand up.
Okay.
Mr. Gorman, I'm not sure if that was from before.
Well, that's where we would speak to him about it. And just to speak to protocol, I do believe, Mr. Gorman, when we started the discussion, you did have an opportunity to speak once already. Now, granted, just saying from an organizational standpoint, we did follow the procedures when we did ask for hands earlier. as soon as we go back into the deliberations of saying a motion is being passed, then the deliberations are ceased at that point. Am I correct on that, Glenn?
Yeah, I think we're in a position now where after entering into deliberations, then there's no more time for comments, and you did have an opportunity to comment, which we appreciate at the beginning of the discussion. Yeah, again, my apologies for mistaking that for an error. But I don't know that we can go back and change anything at this juncture. And the AGM's coming up fast and furious, so.
Yeah. Joe and I spoke before the call. He was coming on, but he was having some difficulties. But at this point, passing the motion to nominate Mr. Gorman, as I was saying, in order to nominate him to the position, we've now done that as a board. So now we would contact him to see if he accepts or not, and then we would notify the members accordingly.
And there's no obligation during a board meeting exercising the right to fill an open seat that individuals that are being considered have to give some sort of a speech in advance or something.
And I'm sorry to interrupt. Joe is on. His hand is up. I just can't. I'm waiting on Mr. Gorman.
Fair enough. Thank you. I appreciate that, Brad.
Thanks,
Mr. Gorman.
Okay.
He says, I accept.
Mr. Skelly, go ahead and hit *6. If you can.
I'm here.
*6 on your phone. It should unmute you because I think you're on a phone right now. If not, we do see your acceptance in here. And I know the board will be reaching out to you separately so that they can discuss the next steps.
Yeah, there are definitely some requirements to being a board member. And so I appreciate you, Jesse, making sure that he's aware of those obligations so that we can make sure that we stay fully compliant as board members. So with that, I don't know how we want to proceed. How important might it be to make sure that we've given Carl an opportunity to participate in some of these important remaining issues? It's completely up to the other board members if they would like to proceed and actually see if we can't resolve some of these other matters. We could move on to the re-roofing project discussion, for example.
Yeah, I think the rest of the agenda, I'm fine to move forward with, only because we've had the time, because we were noticed for this week meeting a week earlier. We've had time to review the full policies and things that are being proposed. So I'm okay with us proceeding.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And also, if there's a way that we can get Joe's microphone activated, then he's here at the meeting. We should make sure to.
I have him as permission already. He still has permission to speak, and I've sent him a few asks to unmute. Joe, if you're on your phone again, *6. We'll get you to unmute. Now, if you're on a computer, which I think you might be because you had a chat of some sort, you're going to use your little microphone to the left.
And otherwise, we can always look for his comments on these matters in the chat box as well. So in that case, moving on to the re-roofing project and the owner insurance quote, who would like to tee us up on where we're at on that?
I can partially tee us up.
No, Ben, I was going to say, so I think this was a Ben added item. So I was going to throw it in report anyway.
So we've had almost a full year of owners running into issues with the insurance not being renewed on their properties. In particular, it's really come to a head over the last 6 to 8 months. Legislation is currently being reviewed and I think even passed at the state legislative level to try and address the very issue of roofs over the age of 15 that insurance companies are choosing no longer to insure. And so in the past, there have been notices sent to owners, and Jesse and the team have been able to provide a letter, wind reports, those kind of things, a schedule of when the roofs are going to be anticipated to replace so that they can maintain insurance. But in some cases, it's not actually been enough. So like my own case is one of them where we were given a notice of cancellation. And so we're currently trying to find other companies, and the companies that have been willing to do it up until now over the past few months, even, weeks before I've reached out to them, they've been able to, but underwriting has changed. And many individual homeowners, when their policies are coming up for renewal, if they're in phase 2 to 5, are facing some issues there. So with that, Carl had brought up some good points about whether or not coverage and things should be discussed at this level. And Jesse, is there anything I'm missing out there?
No, I think that's about it. Again, just as a reminder for anyone that is having, difficulties, as much as, you can let us know, and we'll try to get you those letters about your roof and our responsibility in that. But no, I think you touched base on it all.
One thing I want to add, Ben, our insurance company, obviously, who has where we have the master policy with, he said there's always an insurance company. It's just a matter of pricing, what you pay. And we all have faced that. Mine has doubled. In the 3 years, my home insurance has doubled. So, and I had a 30% increase year over year from last year to this year. And my roof is 15 years old as well. So, but there are insurance companies who obviously will sign you. You just need to be willing to pay a little more. Of course, it's a sticker shock at that point. But if he would be the last resource, if there's absolutely an owner who would say, I cannot find anyone, we could always refer to him and pass the owners on to our insurance company, and he's willing to help out on that.
Our insurance company or our agent?
Our agent obviously was assured parties. Okay. And that company, again, the property I live in, we have 5,000 homes, and they are having a master policy in that resort as well. So obviously they are used to the issues which we're dealing with.
And when it comes to the roofs, are they safe and being maintained? And are we on track to, take care of our obligations under the reserve study?
Yes. As we discussed in a prior meeting, we obviously we couldn't ask for quotes because it doesn't make any sense to ask quotes for September project now because the prices will change. So we asked them to do it around July to give us the proposals, which we could then present to you. And what we have told them, we would like to have the proposals for phase 2 and for phase 3. And the board could look at both of them and at a potential savings for us, could approve both phases at the same time. So we would have not a locked in price, but at least at a potential minimal increase locked in price, which they could give us then at a savings for signing both phases. And we would suggest to do phase 3 earlier next year. So that's not waiting until September next year. So that phase 2 and phase 3 would be done within probably a 7-8 months period.
I have a question. So have we had any owners to be denied coverage? We have a lot of owners that are selling, a lot of new owners coming in buying. Have we run into any problems where someone who is not able to be insured because of the roofs, and what is our obligation? That's one part of it. And the other part is we ask for proof of insurance from every owner. If we are not doing the roofs in a timely manner, based on the study, we thought that we had time, but now based on, underwriters, we are seeing that we don't have the time. So what is our obligation to help these owners in obtaining coverage? And I hear what you're saying, Paul, you have to be able to spend more. Some owners may not have the ability to spend more. So what is our obligation?
So from the, what we spoke to from our insurance agent and from legal on the first portion of it, yes, we are required to collect owner's insurance. That is where our responsibility ends, is the collection of that. And now it is up to the owners to actually get us that information on there. Now I know, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, I know Ben was one of the only ones that I've heard of that was, full out denied. Did you find a workaround with that, Ben?
Yeah. So ultimately, they can't bind quotes and insurance until 30 days. And so our renewal was at the end of June. So even though we were pursuing other companies, we had 4 of them that turned us down because of it. One actually was like, yes, we can. And then a day later, they came back with, actually, the rules just changed a week ago. We can't. So I'll let you know the outcome. But like Paul said, I'm positive there are companies out there who will do it. It might just be two times as much or more. So even with new owners coming in, it would be interested as we see their policies coming out in phases 2 through 5, seeing if they had any difficulties in obtaining the insurance.
And then on the second portion of that question, we are based off of that reserve study that we had. And that reserve study tells us that our roofs are supposed to last until our scheduled time that we've already planned to do it. And we recently got it last year, so we have an updated reserve study. So we're going to continue to follow along with that reserve study of the scheduled time of those re-roofs. Now, again, as we stated, if anyone has issues of leakage or anything like that, then they are able to report it to us, and we will do any sort of correction in the interim. So we do address those problems as they are given to us, and we will make those corrections as needed. Did that answer your questions, Carol?
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. Yeah, we did receive a rejection letter as well, or denial letter as well. So we're working with our insurance company.
Okay, well, let us know if there's anything that we can do to assist, and that's across the board. Any owners, if you're having issues with insurance renewal, again, I know the letters might not be everything, but if there's anything that we can do or present to let your insurance know that the responsibility of the roofs is under us, then please open a service request. It does look like we have a hand if there's no other comments from board members.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Mr. Kimball, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, how's everybody doing?
Hello.
All I was wondering is, I did go looking myself. I was unable to find it. I know it's there, I'm sure, but I don't know exactly when my phase or the different phases are going to have the roof replaced. And Ben, to your comment, my policy came up in April and it did double in price, but I did have a water claim a year or 2 ago, so I had nowhere else to be able to go to. So, there is a place. I was an insurance broker for years. I've retired now, so in Canada, not down here. So I'm just wondering if we could have it posted, or can somebody send me a little note as to where to find when each phase, what buildings are in which phase, and which phase is going to have the replacement of the roof, just so I can kind of prepare for it. As best as I understand, I might not be able to get mine until sometime after my renewal, 2023. So I'm probably in for another $1,000 or $1,500 more than what I used to pay, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
I have a quick suggestion. The ease of it is the year we're in. So 2022 is phase 2, 23 is phase 3, 24 is phase 4, and 25 is phase 5. If memory serves, it was 1 a year. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And what time of year?
And again, we can't, if you're 24, I can't say what month or time frame that's going to happen in 24. I can say that we're planning on 2022, which would be phase 2. Again, the plan is for the end of the year 2022 for us to be doing phase 2, and then we are looking at an early time frame for 23. We're looking to get both phase 2 and 3 approved at the same time, with the understanding that they'll keep that rate as long as we do a January, February timeframe for 23 for phase 3. So again, that's the plan that we're going to be looking at. I know we're already starting to work with vendors on quotes. Again, we have to just be really kind of time constrained, just because we can't propose it out too far in advance, or by the time of the meeting, it will the quotes will change.
Perfect. I think I'm in phase 3. I really don't know. I'm 509 La Mirage. And I did see the guys working just barely up the street from me, and they work very, very fast. So hopefully if I'm in 3, that it is January, February, March before my April renewal, and it'll save me quite a bit of money. Thanks very much. Do appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It does look like I have another hand raised. Mr. Short, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello.
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 Yeah, I'm also in the same position. Our insurance is going to be up for renewal. We live in the UK, so we're probably going to maybe look forward to getting some information from Jesse as when our roof is going to be completed or scheduled for completion. My question is really about insurance in general. As a resort, we've got over 500 homes, with each owner or paying over $1,000 possibly for insurance, which to me is it's money that we have to spend, but I don't see any benefit from it sometimes. I've been an owner for quite a few years, never ever used the insurance. It's always been there as a policy. Is there any way that we can have as a cooperative a resort insurance which we pay into? For example, it's run by the board or run by the resort, and then the resort has a fund which can pay out for repairs. For example, if somebody did have a problem with the roof and it was, or anything, but at least if there wasn't any money being used from the insurance for repairs, then that could go into a fund to help the resort itself.
Paul, you're on mute. I don't hear anything.
Oh, he's not on mute, but I can't hear him either. I don't know what happened.
So it's not just Joe Skelly.
Yeah, that's odd. No, but he isn't muted. Paul, mute yourself and unmute yourself. Try to unmute yourself again. No, he's still muted. No. I believe what Paul is probably going to say, though, is that in the docs, it kind of lays out exactly what the board and what the HOA is required and liable to provide insurance for. And as of the docs, it is not written in there that the board must provide that. So unless we were to change the docs or update those at any point in time, which I don't believe that they would want to take on such a liability right away, then I am not sure. But I don't think that will be something in the future, again, unless the board would like to correct me on that there's something interested in looking into. But because of the documents and how it is stated, owners are liable and responsible for their own insurance.
Yeah, I think that's essentially the point. The documents don't authorize us to be able to provide that insurance, and we would really want to amend the documents to place that obligation on us before taking it on.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It was just an idea of maybe using some sort of the money that's going into insurance policies to benefit the resort rather than the insurance companies.
No, I hear you. Divide and conquer. I make more money if you take everybody individually and charge them a little bit more than what you might get with economies of scale. But for whatever reason, our builder chose not to set us up that way. So but we can go ahead and blame Tusa Homes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
And just as we're talking about that, sorry, Glenn, I just want to clarify that the units in phase 5, they have a different insurance as a condo association versus the owners. So I don't believe units in phase 5 have insurance on their roofs. Is that correct, Glenn?
Well, because the one half of phase 5 is in the Villas at Regal Palms Association. So it's a sub-association. The documents for that sub-association require that association to obtain the insurance for the benefit of all the owners. So they're falling under a slightly different set of rules because it's actually a sub-association underneath RPOA. So that's a good distinction to make. And it's just the back half of phase 5, 106. Okay, thank you for all the comments on that. So I think that really kind of concludes this as a discussion item, unless someone disagrees. In that case, the next one is potential board of director meeting time change.
Yes, this was, I think, something that was sent in by Kathy prior to her leaving. She had received a few emails from owners talking about the time and date of our scheduled meetings. Not so much the frequency, but of that they can't make them because that they're at work. We let them know that, historically that we're aware that they've always been at this time. But I know it was just brought up that a couple owners were looking to see if the time could be changed.
Okay. Ben, I sound like you might have a comment.
Yeah, my only comment would be that we've tried outside of the board meetings. We've tried the town hall forums. We've tried different times. We've put it out. Now, granted, it's been a few years of running those. It's been a while since we did have one, but we've tried evening times. We've done board meetings on a Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we've had roughly a little less attendance than when we've done on an afternoon. I don't think we've ever tried a morning or a weekend, and I would prefer not to do that. So for me, I mean, when I hear the same reasons, I have the exact same reasons. I work, if you see my office, I'm self-employed, but I am in my office. And so when others have shared that they have difficulty with getting the time off work or other things, my thing would be, if you know that there's an agenda item you want to be present for, you can call in just for that short time. You don't have to be here the whole time. I mean, today we've had, average to slightly higher than average attendance with over 30. And so I do think that for now, as we talked about, until there's a board change even in September, I do think the afternoon of a Thursday works well. Today's a Friday, so it's a little more tight. So I do like a Thursday because Friday, the end of the week, get going. But what does anyone else think here? Carol?
Yeah, I think in my opinion, the afternoon works well because we have so many different owners from different time zones. And, the further east, the later it gets, the, west, the earlier it is. So, I think this is a pretty good time. I mean, I know I work as well. And what I do is, because I know the meetings are the same time, bi-monthly, I will go on and book those out. So I will plan all of my business around those times. So I had to make a workaround to make sure that I'm here. And that's just one consideration. If we know that they're in advance and we know the dates in advance, then we can do a workaround. But I think to be mindful of our owners that are, at different time zones, I think this has been probably the time that works the best.
And I'll just go ahead and add to that the most important attendees at any board meeting are the board members. And so if we were to set it up in such a way that it made it difficult to even get to the quorum requirement, that could have detrimental consequences. And I know that we as a board have said, hey, let's try something else. And we go back and forth in emails about trying to coordinate everyone's schedule at a different date and time. And it seems like it creates more trouble. And this has really kind of, worn its way into a pattern of my life that I always have this time booked and reserved. And for me, it's the morning, it's still technically morning over here when the meeting starts. And so I think we can let the new board after the AGM decide if this still works for them or if they want to do it some other way.
Yeah, and for me, I would like to say that Thursdays are better than Friday, especially with trying to get things wrapped up. And as the weather changes and travel and other things. So yeah, a Thursday is definitely a better option. I do know last week we postponed just because of other circumstances. Mm-hmm. And again, to anyone on this call, my apologies. I was part of the problem with my scheduling, but I appreciate that we moved it around today.
No problem.
I can say though that the 2:00 time today, we had, I think, up to 37 attendees at one point, which was one of our highest meetings yet. So
nice.
Well, If a Friday is a short meeting at 2, that's one thing, but we're hitting the 2-hour mark now. So just saying.
Yep. I think we're good where we are at this point. And so how about if we move on to the last 2 items that both have to do with the rules and regulations?
Yes. Let me pull up what I sent you. So there are 2 different things that we were discussing today. One, I am requesting for an approval for the change of the rule and reg, and the other, it will require a 14-day notice. So I'm just asking you to review it and let me know if there's any change in the verbiage that you would like. On the very first one, there was an incident by the pool with a firearm that happened a couple weekends ago. Polk County was not of much assistance only because we had nothing to back in our rules and regs that did not allow firearms in the area. So the very, very first rule that I'm looking for approval for is an addition. It'll be rule number 42, and I'll go ahead and just read that out. No person other than a sworn law enforcement officer or on-duty security personnel authorized by the association may possess, carry, or discharge a firearm on association property or facilities, including the clubhouse and all common areas, without advance written authorization from the board of directors. This includes persons who possess a license or other authorization issued by the state of Florida or any other governmental entity. Unauthorized possession of a firearm and on association property, including a first offense, may result in fines and loss of the privilege to use association facilities. Gun owners may transport firearms across the private roads of the association only while moving them to and from their unit to locations outside the association. Firearms must be unloaded and safely stored during such transport. The association has no obligation to prevent or stop the possession, carry, or use of firearms on its property. For purposes of this rule, firearms shall include but are not limited to the following: handguns, rifles, shotguns, BB guns, paintball guns, and any other type of weapon that expels a projectile of any type.
Sounds like it was written by an attorney.
Yeah. The only thing that I would ask about is the fact that the last line says paintball guns and any other type of weapon that expels a projectile of any type. And so my question would be whether or not that's a device rather than weapon, because weapon indicates the intention to harm, whereas, there are some, there are other kinds of projectile things like a potato gun or whatever else that wouldn't be considered a weapon. So I'm just curious about that.
I don't know, would then that also include a hose? Expels water.
Expels a projectile of any type. It might.
Yeah, if you put the nozzle on the end of your hose, it's a really fine projectile and it can hurt when it hits. This is something we could easily go to Larson over, but I think it's in keeping with the intent that the device is basically agreed to or intended to be a weapon.
Okay.
Which would include the potato gun.
Yeah. Would a taser be included in there? It's not a projectile, but it does expel, it's a weapon.
This is not, it's really talking about a projectile. So tasers aren't listed in here.
No, not the taser that you touch someone with, but the one that shoots. Do you get what I'm saying?
I can see that. Yeah, it expels a projectile of any type. So even if it's a cord with, a metal prong at the end,
And just to also clarify for Jesse, when you stated this at the beginning, there are a few owners that had questions beforehand as to why they didn't review this before in the board notice. And so I just wanted to clarify that when making changes to the rules and regulations like this, the board doesn't notice owners because it's a change to the rules as opposed to, Glenn, correct me if I'm wrong, when we're making changes to individual owner usage in the rules and regulations and their properties.
So if it has to do with the owner's physical lot, any changes for an owner's physical lot, then we do need to give a 14-day notice and provide the rules ahead of time. Because this is not pertaining to your physical lot, and this is pertaining to the common areas in the clubhouse, no 14-day notice is required. And as long as there's approval by the board, we are required to post as soon as they are approved and with the county. You will see with the second rule addition that we're looking to discuss today, that one will not be able to be approved today because it has to do with an owner's lot. So that second one we are holding off, but this first one, because again, it's to do with the clubhouse, we are not required for that.
And something I saw in this one that, is important is that, hey, what about the roads, is a gun trapped on your lot if it's there already? And so, no, it contemplates the practicality of, hey, I need to go and take it somewhere. You're allowed to use our roads only when moving your gun off of your property and over to someone else's place. And so, like Jesse was saying, this isn't intended to impact you having a gun at your townhome.
Wrong with you, isn't it?
All right. So in that case, it looks like we have some hands up.
Yes, it does. Mr. Gorman, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. All right. Thanks, Brad.
It does look
Before we
like
go
I
to
have...
the hand, can we address some of that?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not really sure of what other owners were involved. And just from the perspective of the actual situation, the county was called. We also involved, personal legal team on the situation of how it was handled.
That's what I was going to say. And that's all I was going to say is, as an association, we rely heavily on our legal counsel to guide us in matters like this. And so this very rule, though I did question the term of weapon, was drafted and reviewed by our legal team to recommend to the board as an addition within our rules, including the portion in which it does say that this includes persons who possess a license or other authorization issued by the state of Florida or any other governmental entity. So I do believe it does cover a wide base of people who would who this would impact. And to touch on BB guns being mentioned specifically, paintball guns, it may be wise to also include airsoft guns. In Canada, where we are, there are certain laws in place that restrict the feet per second that a weapon can be fired at, or an airsoft gun that you can buy at a store like a Walmart. They have to be regulated to be under a certain speed because they can be deadly if somebody gets hit with one of those. So I would suggest that we maybe a water gun wouldn't be classified as a weapon, like Glenn, you said, but you know, an airsoft gun could be a weapon, right? That's just my initial thoughts.
If we're talking about an expelling, if it's expelling a projectile of any type.
I wouldn't consider water a projectile. I would consider a water balloon potentially a projectile in terms of terminology, but just wanting to address some of those things that maybe just to clarify, Jesse, Rick's team have reviewed this and suggested this verbiage, correct?
Correct. Yes, this is coming entirely from Larson's team. And then I also included his physical email to the board on each rule of what his thoughts were on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I think we're wanting to make sure that we know that we're not just coming off half-cocked and addressing situations ad hoc, and instead we've identified a situation where, hey, protecting our clubhouse area is really important, and we've got 2 exemptions: a sworn law enforcement officer or an on-duty security personnel that we have authorized, and that's it. Anyone else, we don't want that liability for ourselves or for the other folks that are trying to enjoy our facilities.
Unless they receive the written notice from the board of directors.
Okay, it does look like I have a few other hands. Stu, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I did look up the law at the time that it occurred. And yes, it is legal to open carry in Florida, but not in public places. Since our property is not a public place, you must have a wristband to get in. You must essentially, to be into the development, you have to go through security. It's not public place. Therefore, we would need this type of a rule. It's a very simple one, and it's very well stated. My only concern is that things like a Nerf gun, which might be considered a toy, a non-destructive toy, and I don't know any way to actually word that other than to specifically mention a particular item. But that's the type of thing that is, it's meant to be fired, but it's a sponge. It's not going to hurt anybody. And I don't know if we want to go down that hole to have people start bringing up specific little things like that maybe we can find some kind of a clause in that. Also, I wanted to point out that you did have that third option, and you did mention it just before I spoke, that if somebody does have something that they think is appropriate to use, they can approach the board can approve that. That is in the rule. That was written into the rule. It's law enforcement officers, somebody hired by and pre-approved by the board, or somebody that has gotten approval from the board. So that is in the rule, and that would cover just about everything that could come up. So that's what I needed to say.
That's a good comment, and that's probably the important reason why that written authorization from the board was included, because this isn't intended to cover every possible variation and level of, projectile.
Can I just say, though, that I misinterpreted that statement, and now I think we all are. The statement very clearly says, no person other than a sworn law enforcement officer or on-duty security personnel authorized by the association may possess, carry, or discharge a firearm on association property or facilities, including the clubhouse and all common areas, without advance written authorization from the board of directors. It only addresses 2 people: on-duty security personnel and sworn law enforcement officer. So I misread that, and Stu and Glenn, it's nobody else other than those 2.
Oh, okay. Then I misinterpreted it as well.
It does say without advance written authorization.
Yeah, but it says it's a part of the sentence of the on-duty security personnel. It's talking specifically about them in that sentence.
Okay, I can't see the punctuation, so that's why I was confused on that.
Okay, well, we can, I'll be honest, I think without advance written authorization from the board has no meaning unless it's giving the board the authority to grant something other than a law enforcement officer or an off-duty security personnel, or an on-duty security personnel.
On duty. So meaning if we hired our security officers at the guard shack, we give authorization to them to carry a weapon. That's where the written authorization would come from the board. So I don't see a third person identified in that statement.
Well, we can certainly make sure that we get clarification from Rick on how that last clause is intended to be written.
I have added that to the notes to get clarification, just in case.
And to clarify, I'm open to that clarification being added so that we can have that opportunity if we as a board choose to. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
A question about the police officer. Law enforcement, should they be in the line of duty? Because if you have an off-duty police officer, they're licensed, they're sworn in to be a police officer. Would they be allowed to carry on premise, or should they be only in the line of duty?
I mean, aren't they always a police officer 24 hours a day?
Yes.
They're only going to get paid for a certain, rate, but they really are a police officer at all times.
Yeah. So that's where the distinction is. If they're a sworn law enforcement officer, like a federal agent or, on or off duty, they are licensed to bring their weapon.
I do have some other hands raised just so we can keep moving. Miss McCreary, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hello. I'm just going to bring this one thing up. We had a thing on Facebook one time where somebody had kids who kept going up to the ring and messing with it and stuff. And I kind of made a joke. It would be funny if they had it kind of like a clown that has a flower that water would squirt out when the kids was there, squirt water out at them. And I had an owner accuse me of doing something like that, which I would assume would be kind of like a water gun, that I was basically telling someone else to assault a child. So I think it's the mindset of different people. And, I think you all are doing great. You all know the words or whatever, but just to tell you, some people, they said I was advocating assaulting a child just by making a joke and made a big deal about it. So just to let y'all know that some people maybe would consider a water gun a weapon, since if you said squirt water on a kid who's playing on a ring, and the kid would have cracked up laughing about it. I know my grandson would, but just some people's mindsets go that way, just to let you all know.
And just to key in on your use of the term assault, an assault is an intentional touching, which is deemed harmful or offensive by the person who received it. And so that's a completely different issue and concept. Grabbing a plate out of somebody else's hand because you don't want them to get food could be deemed as an assault, or flicking someone's hat off of their head could be deemed an assault. And so causing that, clown to squirt water into somebody else's eye, as soon as the water hits their eye, if you're the one that caused it, you could be deemed, accused of assault, but it would still have to be proven in a court of law. And I think that is a totally different process that would need to be evaluated, as opposed to whether or not we can have firearms.
Right. I was just, when you all brought up Nerf guns and water guns and this and that popped in my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was just talking about basically playing with a water gun, type thing. I just wanted to let you know that has come up, and somebody deemed that as basically being a weapon. So just to let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Dennis? Jesse, are you able to?
Yep. Dennis, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay. First, I agree with Mr. Gorman that there's already rules on the books to cover a lot of this stuff. I'm not a big fan myself of open carry or constitutional carry, but I know there's probably a lot of us on the resort that have our concealed carry permits in multiple states. So I guess one of my concerns is, you made the comment, I can't transport my gun if it's loaded on the street. So if I'm driving from my house on the resort and going out public or whatnot, are you saying I can't have my gun loaded on me in the car, even if I do have a concealed carry permit?
That's correct. That's a correct interpretation of the way the rule is written. because even though we're talking about those being common roads, they're still common area. And so there's an exemption, technically speaking, with respect to the roads that allows you to transport as long as you're leaving the resort and as long as it's not loaded. Otherwise, you can do what you want on your property and you can do what you want outside of the resort because we have no jurisdiction there. But this is the position we're taking with respect to how firearms are being handled while on common areas of the resort.
Is that it, Mr. Lesser?
Yeah, I guess if you have your concealed carry permit, you're already fingerprinted. They do lots of background checks. I mean, you already have proven that you understand how to use a firearm. It's just like any other law. Bad guys are not going to care about your rules. It's, you're licensed people, you're good guys basically with guns. I mean, we're responsible. We know what we're doing. We're not running around and flashing them. Again, like I said, I understand the open carry. I'm not really a big fan of open carry, but concealed carry, you don't know who's carrying a gun and who's not. And I don't see if you're traveling in your vehicle, how it could be a threat or even cause any fear to anyone else because they don't know if you have a gun on you or not. So I guess that's just my comment on it.
Yeah, and this is a hot button item, and it always will be. And so, we're doing our best as a board to try and strike a balance and minimize risks, here on our resort properties. So I appreciate those comments.
I do have one more hand raised, and I think that'll be it after that. Mr. Kevin Kelly, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, thanks. Afternoon, everyone. So, Glenn, Ben, Paul, how are you going to prevent somebody from going through the turnstile with a weapon again? We have rules and regulations, but this fellow was a guest, so I'm not sure whether or not he got the memo. How do you prevent that again?
Well,
we didn't. Oh, sorry, go for it.
Well, I was just thinking, I think it's intentional that our attorneys put in the statement that the association has no obligation to prevent or stop the possession. So that's not something we would want to do anyways, is someone's got a gun and say, hey, you stop, you can't bring it in. Because for one thing, I don't have a gun if I'm the one telling him that. And so I am definitely going to report it to somebody else, including possibly, the police immediately, so that they can be the ones to deal with that situation.
Yeah, because it just seems a little out of place for, we talk about these people that get permits, and Dennis was mentioning, and I'm sure this is a sensitive topic for me. Yeah, maybe the guy's trained. So are the police, but they're trained to empty their magazine on you. And I was trained a little bit differently. It just seems to me it's a little out of place bringing a weapon into a pool area or even into the Frankie Farrell's area if you're going through there to get to the pool. Even in Rhodesia, when Rhodesia was around, you had to check your rifle at the supermarket counter before going into the supermarket. I mean, it's crazy. There should be some sort of way to prevent people from going in. If that thing accidentally discharges, it falls off the counter or some table or something like that. It just seems a little bit dangerous when it's not even needed. If it's not holstered, if it's out of the holster, there's intent. And that's the way I look at it. It should be in a safe place. And if it's not on somebody's waist, holstered, okay, there's intent. It has to be looked that way. So I'm just wondering, I'm rethinking the whole idea of going over to the pool area with the kids to the grandkids or something. That's nuts. It just nuts. Something else needs to be done. I mean, that's not right. That's all I got on that.
All right, thank you
so much, Mr. Kelly. Can I just
go ahead?
Sorry. I know you've got another person in line, but I just want to say that I think it's very good to have this discussion. But what we're talking about is that the association had no formal rules in place before this situation happened. It highlighted an issue or a loophole, I guess I could say, in the process. I mean, people can walk through the gate without going through guest services or Frankie Farrell's to get to the pool area. We are not talking about introducing any kind of metal detector or anything like that to inspect people before they come in. Part of our rules do say that guest services can inspect bags, make sure there's no food, things like that. But with this rule being adopted, it then allows us to be able to say, actually, this person, if they're carrying a weapon, we can call the police because they're in violation of our rules and our staff are not approaching them. And that's the difference. And that's what we're here discussing today, is implementing this rule to be able to contact law enforcement to say we have a safety issue or we have somebody who's violated a rule and it's a safety issue. Am I correct?
Yeah. And I'll just add to that I would expect nothing less than a robust discussion regarding an important topic like this.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we need to evaluate as a board our obligation to look out for the best interests of all of our owners. And so this is what we came up with after consulting with our attorney.
Yeah, and I don't think there's ever a problem with having more protections in place than a lack of protections. And that's what rules are for. Rules are there to provide additional guidelines for the protection of our association. So I don't think there's any issue with having additional rules if it's going to add to the protection overall. Sorry, I'm not to try and rush into a decision on anything. I do have a hard stop for another meeting at 1:30 my time. And so I just don't want to have to, drop off the call in the middle of something.
Okay, perfect. I know we had one more hand, and then we'll be very strict with our 3-minute time frame. So Mr. Missler, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I have allotted you to talk, and then we can move on to our last topic.
Hey, good afternoon. Hey, we are covered by Florida state law anyway. There is no open carry, so I don't know where you're finding your information. I'm a concealed weapons permit holder already. Clearly, this was handled poorly already from the start. But for owners who carry, you're saying that you want me to unload my weapon when I leave my house, to drive down the street, and then load it back up at the gate, and then carry it where I'm going to go? I've been carrying a gun for years. I've never pulled it on anybody. And the goal is you should never know that I'm carrying my gun. So I don't understand why we're writing this rule. I mean, I get it that, we need to protect ourselves, but to say that you want to have all concealed weapon permit holders unload their weapons at their property door and then transport them through the street, that just doesn't make sense to me. So, and I understand what you're saying is overkill sometimes is the best, but for transportation, as long as you're not stopping between point A and point B going through the gate, that just doesn't make sense. Those are my 2 cents. I mean, granted, we should have never seen this guy's gun, even if he was a police officer, and let alone should have never been drinking beer at the bar. So, I mean, that's the first thing. The second thing is there's a lot of people that carry out here, and that I know that live here that you should never even know that they're carrying. But we've all been vetted, we've all been checked by the state of Florida and had our fingerprints run, and we all are following the rules. I mean, you don't see people shooting up the streets now. So that's just my concern. I put my 2 cents in, and thank you so much for giving me the time to say that. I just disagree with this rule.
Thank you so much, Mr. Missler.
Appreciate it.
All right. So in conclusion, with all the comments that have been made, at this juncture, are we in a position to want to be able to take action on this rule? I know I had mentioned wanting to get clarification regarding without advanced written notice from the board of directors. What exactly does that apply to?
So it is up to, the board if you would want to move it with clarification after that, or if you would want to hold off until the July meeting so you could continue to investigate it.
Well, hearing some of the comments coming back about the vehicles on the association roads, there may be a concern over additional danger. I use that term very loosely, but with having to load offsite, unload at your house, those kind of potential issues, I think we should talk about this a little bit more and maybe get clarification from legal on the roadways.
Okay. So
Okay.
I will notate that and then I'll swing you all on a email with Larson.
Very good. Yeah, and share with him some of the comments, the essence of those comments regarding the roadway.
The roadways.
And the difference between in a vehicle versus walking.
Yeah, oh, okay. Good point.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I will add that all in and then we'll get more clarification from him.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll continue to evaluate that change. With respect to the other changes for Rule 36, 37, and 38, have board members had an opportunity to review those proposals? And are we in a position to want to recommend that notice be given in advance of our next board meeting so we can actually approve them or consider approving them?
Can I just say yes, yes, and yes? When we first started talking about instituting fines, and this was the very question of why would we not have a mechanism to be able to do exactly what this rule states without having to notice 3 times over the same issue. So I'm kind of at a loss when I saw this as to why this wasn't an option to us at the very beginning with legal, because we talked about that very thing. You know, seeing someone who has a pet that poops on the floor or poops on the grass and doesn't pick it up, noticing them once, you have to fine them doing it 2 more times before you can actually issue a fine. That I'm sure some of you were on that call when we first talked with legal. So yes, I'm all in favor of adding this rule and noticing owners about us trying to implement it.
Okay. Carol?
Definitely align. Ben, ditto to everything you just said. So
yes. In that case, with the notice, then it will be out there for review by owners, and comments on those would be appropriate at the meeting where we're going to consider approving them.
In July.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what we're talking about. So to quickly summarize, since we're looking at these drafts, we are replacing some of the terminology in the rules and regulations to allow the board to levy fines against appropriate members and occupants for violations of the rules and regulations that have been established by the association. And a single action or event that violates these rules will result in a formal written notification of the violation and can have a fine levied of up to $100 in the way that we do it with the fining committees and everything else. But essentially, that's the topic that you'll see noticed before the next meeting, roughly 2 weeks beforehand.
With an opportunity to be heard and so forth.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So then, Paul, you have direction to go ahead and, satisfy the notice requirement so that we can bring it up for review and action.
Okay.
So with that, I do have to leave, but are there other pressing matters that we should address at this point? Are other board members?
No, not that I'm aware.
No. I was just going to clarify really quickly, Glenn, that this whole thing we're talking about has nothing to do with regular issues. It would be one-offs like a noise complaint or fireworks being set off by guests. Those kind of instances that would warrant a single time to try and remedy and or fine. That's what we're talking about, because I know there's almost 2 months before you'll see these rules to actually review. So it's within context of what's appropriate to issue a notice of it needs to be remediated or moving to a fine that can be, disputed.
Yeah, that will have due process over and give them an opportunity to be heard. All right, very good. I apologize. I am going to have to head out. Carol, it didn't sound like you had anything necessarily. And Ben, appreciate everybody's opportunity to put this on the books and be here for this entire time. And so thank you guys so much. And our board meeting is considered adjourned.
Thank you.
And-
Thank you.
And
Thanks,
it's
everybody.
officially adjourned because we're no longer in quorum, so we can't take any more questions. As soon as Glenn has left, which he has to, then the board meeting can't continue or take more questions, unfortunately.
Excellent point. Thank you. All right, everybody, take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.